All right, so I begin. So this is the first presentation, and the second one will be about myelin. Architectural Requiem. Actually, I prepared this presentation when a big tragedy happened in the Bucharest, when in a club, 65 people died, including some architects and students in architecture. It was a fire, yeah, as I said, 65 people died in very, very tragic circumstances. And at that time, I also launched a competition, the House of Grief, to pay homage to them. But I will begin with a text from a great film director, Ingmar Bergman, Swedish film director, in my opinion, the best film director ever, just to make myself and you understand how deeply a film director thinks about architecture, actually. Something we forget. Architects sometimes forget the very essence of their mission on this earth. So, Ingmar Bergman, about creativity. It's not the shortest text, but I'll try to read it quickly. People ask, what are my intentions with my films, my aims? It is difficult and dangerous question. It is a difficult and dangerous question, and I usually give an evasive answer. I try to tell the truth about the human condition, the truth as I see it. This answer seems to satisfy everyone, but it is not quite correct. I prefer to describe what I would like my aim to be. There is an old story of how the Cathedral of Chartres was struck by lightning and burned to the ground. Then thousands of people came from all points of the compass like a giant procession of ants, and together they began to rebuild the cathedral on its old site. They worked until the building was completed. Master builders, artists, laborers, clowns, noblemen, priests, burghers. But they all remained anonymous, and no one knows to this day who built the Cathedral of Chartres. Regardless of my own beliefs and my own doubts, which are unimportant in this connection, it is my opinion that art lost its basic creative drive the moment it was separated from worship. It severed an umbilical cord and now lives its own sterile life, generating and degenerating itself. In former days, the artist remained unknown, and his work was to the glory of God. He lived and died without being more or less important than other artisans. Please be kind and turn off the microphone. Please be kind and turn off the microphone. You know, this makes my task extremely difficult. Please turn off the microphone, otherwise I have to start from the beginning. I cannot read and I cannot talk with a background noise, please. Okay, so the artist, he lived and died without being more or less important than other artisans. Eternal values, immortality, and masterpiece were terms not applicable in his case. The ability to create was a gift. In such a world flourished invulnerable assurance and natural humility. Today, the individual has become the highest form and the greatest bane of artistic creation. The smallest wound or pain of the ego is examined under a microscope as if it were of eternal importance. The artist considers his isolation, his subjectivity, his individualism almost holy. Thus we finally gather in one large pen where we stand and bleat about our loneliness without listening to each other and without realizing that we are smothering each other to death. The individualists stare into each other's eyes and yet deny the existence of each other. We walk in circles so limited by our own anxieties that we can no longer distinguish between true and false, between the gangster's whim and the purest ideal. Thus, if I am asked what I would like the general purpose of my films to be, I would reply that I want to be one of the artists in the cathedral on the Great Plain. I want to make a dragon's head, an angel, a devil, or perhaps a saint out of stone. It does not matter which, it is the sense of satisfaction that counts, regardless of whether I believe or not, whether I am a Christian or not. I would play my part in the collective building of the cathedral. Uh, and I recommend you, if you want this film, if you didn't see it, and it's very relevant to our time because it's about the pandemic during the Middle Ages in Sweden, the Seventh Seal, by this great, truly great artist and director, Ingmar Bergman. This is a scene from the film. I had a video at one moment, but it didn't work technically very well. It's a scene where a knight plays chess with death in order to win and escape death. But in the end, unfortunately, death wins. It's a great film. Okay, so now, in fact, I'm not going to read you now the text of The House of Grief. Is the text for the competition I launched, or I don't know what to do. I'll read it because it's very short. So I wrote this text when the big tragedy at the collective club happened and 65 people died. And it is connected with Maya Lin's work and with her memorial for the Vietnam victims. How to translate grief? It is an indelible pain, the pain of losing someone dear. We grieve. Since we cannot do anything else, we suffer. Words are weak when pain is at its highest. We do not work with words, but with bricks. We ask you to imagine the house of grief. How would it be? Would it be a convenient house? Would it have to respect all the rules and regulations? Would we design it with Neufert on our desk? How would it be? What would Neufert have to say about grief? And could indeed grief be externalized through architecture? Why not? Why shouldn't architecture be able to evoke feelings that are not of a measurable nature, but are feelings ever otherwise? 6 people from Inco, this is the university here, died last week. That's when I wrote then, and others are still in the hospital. We ask you to design the house of pain, the house of grief, in memoriam, like an architectural requiem, to pay homage to those who are not any longer our colleagues, who at the mercy of a malevolent fate vanished beyond the threshold. What threshold? The threshold that separates life and death, the threshold between the here and now and there and then. Design as an architectural eulogy, the house of pain, the house of grievance, the house of dance, fire and death, if we are to be more explicit. I mentioned dance because it was a dancing club and that's when the fire broke in. Design in order to alleviate the pain and to pay homage. Cry, dear architect, through your building. The Taj Mahal was built in the memory of an emperor's beloved wife. We are not emperors, nor are we so emphatically concerned with permanence, but we still can, reflecting on death, imagine a building that would eulogize the colleagues who are not any longer between us. And now I'll show quickly some images of memorial architecture, some from cemeteries, some from not. And then I'll go into detail with some important works by very important architects. I will not comment these pictures. This is just a visual aide-memoire, just to show that what we call death is actually part of life. And, you know, in more recent times, we move these places at the periphery of the cities, at the peripheries of the human settlements, but maybe some kind of intertwining with you know, the living the conditions should be more appropriate, because otherwise we do not reflect enough on the you know, on the beyond, on the life that follows. If it is a life, we don't know what it will be. But I think Ingmar Bergman was right. It's, you know, if you stop thinking of what is beyond the limits of life, in a certain way, you neglect, you know, the cosmic hourglass of the world, and you neglect even death, even God. You know, how could we respiritualize architecture and life if we don't reflect on our vulnerability, on the limits of life? It would be very, very difficult. And I do believe that Bergman was right. At the beginning, art and religion were one. In fact, the oldest definition of art, the one that I found from Sanskrit, was like this: art equals bridge equals God. And yes, art was a form of worshiping. And when they became separated, religion or faith and art, they became both terribly weakened. There is even such a book, Death and Architecture, an introduction to funerary and commemorative buildings. And this is the first pyramid, the step pyramid in Saqqara by the first architect in history, as we know of, Imhotep. The first architect in history was the architect of King or Pharaoh Zoser. And this pyramid in Saqqara is the first stepped pyramid, and you know, it moves me beyond measure. You know, it's you know, more than 5,000 years old. This is Toyo Ito, and now we go to a very you know, important work in Stockholm by Gunnar Asplund, a great, truly great architect. You probably know some of these images because it's a very important architectural work dedicated to the dead. But if it is dedicated to the dead, it doesn't mean that it ends in negation of life. Quite the opposite. I think it encourages us to feel united with what preceded us and what will come after us. So we are in a continuum, on a spiral in time, and good art and good architecture do just this. You know, they fight off isolation and connect us with you know, in a continuum with what preceded us and what might follow us. And so, you know, even if it is a building built for, you know, related to death, I actually think it asserts life. It is, in the end, it is about life, and it doesn't matter the specificities of the religion it explicitly or implicitly, you know, serves. It's a modern work, but it's a modern work by a brilliant architect. You know, if you arrive in Stockholm one day, maybe you'll remember to visit this cemetery because it is a very moving experience. Anyway, I go rather quickly because we have a lot of material to cover. So, you know, what do we see here? We see nature and we see architecture, and they complement each other, and they both make us feel at home, although this is not the home for the living, but it is in a way also implicitly the home for the living. Anyway, I think that these days death is trivialized, so much so that we become almost under some kind of anesthesia, you know. There is so much death on TV, you know, you turn on almost any channel shows scenes of horrific deaths, but somehow exactly because of that, we became less reflective. We don't take death seriously any longer because we probably think that it's like on TV, you know. We see Bruce Willis dying, and we know he's not dying because he's an actor and everything is just on the screen. But it's not like that in real life. In real life, death is not mimicked. It's not made in Hollywood. It's real, and it's painful, and it is hard not to you know, to be you know, very moved and That's why I think it is extremely important to reflect on works, not just from architecture, on works that do not neglect the reality and the dimensions of what we call death has. Anyway, well, in so-called primitive societies or in ancient history, most of the architecture that we know of was actually connected with, with death, connected with faith, with worship, with, they were intertwined, and it is not happening this any longer. Aldo Rossi, the Modena Cemetery, he did a large series of drawings for this, and some brilliant drawings for this competition that he won, and then for the work that was built. Here is the architect. He himself died in a car accident, and he was concerned, I think, in a deep way with death, with funeral or funerary architecture. And I think he was able to create something new, but based on ancient paradigms or certain formal or artistic fundamentalism. You might not agree with necessarily with this architecture. You might think it's too rationalistic, but there is something majestic and otherworldly about it. I have been in this cemetery, and I have to say that it didn't leave me indifferent. Okay, so we move forward. This is Aldo Rossi in Modena. I said this before, and I will say it again. Charles Baudelaire, the great French poet in the 19th century, said that true art has two halves. One half speaks about the ephemeral, the circumstantial, the transitory, and the other half speaks about the eternal and the immutable. This is what a memorial is, or a cemetery is. It handles, the eternal and the permanent. And in I call it the hourglass of existence, you have life and death interconnected, and they complement each other, just as the two halves of art that Charles Baudelaire mentioned. This is a nice picture during the snow. Okay. Carlos Carpa, the famous Brion Cemetery, brilliant architectural work, private cemetery done for the Brion family. It seems even the architect, Carlos Carpa, is buried here. And I read several times somewhere he is buried vertically, I mean, standing. Although there is a plaque, there is a stone that is horizontal and is mentioned his name, but I understood he was somewhere buried here in a standing position. It was an eccentric. Anyway, this great private cemetery, because it was done for a family, the Brion Cemetery is indeed one of the masterpieces of architecture of the second half of the 20th century. And it's full of symbols, and it has a formal complexity. It is actually a celebration of life, although it addresses death. Next to the cemetery is a public cemetery, like a conventional cemetery. It's a big difference between the two. But, their so-called beneficiaries, they are all, colleagues, so to speak, contemporaries in the other world, so to speak. Anyway, Yeah, it is amazing what Carlos Carpa did with exposed concrete, and it's a very sensitive work, and it has this ability to create with the exterior. The exterior becomes intimate, becomes almost an interior because of the affection he infuses into these walls, which instead of separating, actually unite. And there is a proximity of the water, and you can see the fish through the water. I don't know if I have here an image with that, but it is a very important architectural work. But for us, being so concerned with pragmatics, very, very rarely we have spiritual concerns. Death forces us to reflect on in spiritual terms. That's why I think, assuming this side of life is inevitably making us aware of dimensions of life which we usually neglect. Um, you see in the foreground is the common cemetery or the public cemetery. Now this is a very special work also by a very important architect who unfortunately died young, Enric Miralles and Carme Pinós, the Igualada Cemetery near Barcelona. Also a very moving meditation on the finality of life. These are drawings for this cemetery, and even as drawings, I think they are very, very moving. And look here, the side plan is almost like a human being, the profile, the silhouette of a human being. There is fragmentation, but there is a sense of well, this is certainly not a happy place, but it's not supposed to be happy. But on the other hand, I wouldn't see it as a disheartening place or a desolate place, because the level of creativity is high. I think, even such so-called details, it depends. This is a rather sordid corner of this ensemble, this complex of buildings. But all in all, you can tell that it is a genuine creation. It is an intense form of creativity here. And as such, it is a yes to life. It is not actually a yes to death. It is a yes to life. Yes, this pavement here could become disorienting and depressing, but it shows in a way, the reality of what the end of life is. Inevitably we ask questions, who are we? Where do we come from? Where are we going? As the great French painter Paul Gauguin asked. And maybe this is the meaning of these disorienting, wooden fragments on the pavement. It's a cemetery which does not lie, but it is creative, and it also shows the collectiveness that at least death should be giving us, because it's a common destiny. I abhor those. Of course, there are cases and cases, but we all share the same destiny, and this Igualada cemetery does that. It tells us that this is a common feature of human life. We all, after birth, move with every day towards a common destiny, and that is death. We struggle on earth, we fight each other to death, as just Ingmar Bergman mentioned, and we forget that actually we should be one, and we are one. Anyway, so with simple means, they did a lot here, very, and without, an attempt to, embellish anything, I think it's a very moving work, because it does speak about the fragility of life, about vulnerability. Here is Eric Miralles. He died himself of cancer, of brain tumor, actually. I think he was 40, but he was considered as one of the most important architects of his time. And now he's valued a lot, and he should be. Here he is with his second wife anyway. I think they continue to work on this cemetery. I'm a little bit confused. He started with his first wife, Carme Pinos, and then or maybe not. I don't know if his second wife was involved. Anyway, it's not so important. But the work is. Now, very quickly, I'll show you the images. If you are interested to read about these works, which are very interesting, I can send you the PowerPoint presentation. I have one where I also have the descriptions of the projects, but because I don't like to read written text too much in my presentations, I deleted those descriptions, which were rather long. Just visually, I will show you some works from this international architectural competition from 2013 on funeral contemporary architecture. A post community by these two people from Austria. They try to imagine, an architecture for the dead within the big city, within the metropolis, or suited for our time. So, you can probably imagine easily certain scenarios that they had in mind when they created this. You can be very creative indeed in this field if you are given the chance to address the ending of life in a very creative way. And I think that's actually the way we should address it. My favorite place by Thomas series from the US. We can create memorials in so many ways. What is a memorial? A memorial is something that reminds us of something that is not with us any longer. So it speaks about the unseen, the indelible in a way, but that should be addressed. Well, I don't know if I would put it on a beach, but anyway, he did Skylight from Colombia. This one I didn't quite understand. Again, if you are interested to read the text relating to these projects, please tell me so, and I will send you the PowerPoint presentation with a description. I just want to show that, younger architects or not so young reflected on what death means today for us. Most of us living in big cities, but also like in this case, from this architect from China, this is outside of the metropolis. It's another memorial, the eternal recurrence, which has to do with the ultimate, the end of life. Death is forcing us to be or become spiritual. spiritual dimension of life is connected with contemplation. Contemplation is related with, meditating on, the realities of a life, which is not just the prose of every day. Another work from China. Usually, I think these countries with an ancient history are more prone to understand the depth of life, and to the reflection on death to be more profound, I think. And not all countries have the wisdom that, especially the countries in Asia, I think, have. A vertical cemetery from Switzerland, a very dramatic one, very sculptural one. Why not? Now we make everything vertical because we kind of ran out of space, but it's a possibility. The idea is to honor those who are not with us any longer, and to learn from them, actually, and it's possible to learn from them. Nusarium, A Space Eternal, by someone from the States. It's interesting that some of the societies that are the most pragmatic, like the United States, for example, also have an openness towards a theme that is not pragmatic. Like there were architects from the United States here who, like this one, imagined, very fantastic architectures destined for something that is not pragmatic. It's almost like a paradox. A very pragmatic society is also the one that generates ideas for the non-pragmatic part of life. Again, China, some very nice drawings. Of course, the contemplating the end of life is not easy. And inevitably you are in turmoil. And these drawings, these renderings show just that, turmoil. Sorry, some of these images are, difficult to comprehend because of their, size and the resolution. But here, put it very simply, is about, again, allowing death to nourish life. Maybe here too explicitly, but I still think that the two sides of existence are connected, and one is fed by the other one. Life is fed by the memories that the afterlife generate, and of course is the other way around. Necropolis Reborn from New Zealand. Now this it's difficult to understand what's going on without the descriptions, but as I said, I could offer them to you if you are interested to study them. I just wanted to create a context within which, and it will happen in a few minutes, I will talk about the memorial built by Maya Lin. Maya Lin, who, again, I don't think is without importance that, her parents were from China. And before I end this preliminary presentation, I recommend you, if you want, suggest to you another great film by another great film director. In fact, Bergman thought that Andrei Tarkovsky, the Russian film director, was the greatest ever. I don't know. I mean, in the field of art, it's difficult to truly say this is the best and this is the worst. But I mean, hierarchies are subjective. But both Bergman and Tarkovsky are without doubt two giants in the field of film. And the film nostalgia is very, very moving and somehow related to the theme today. So if you have an interest, you can probably download it for free on the web. This is just a scene from the film where a poet is trying to bring a candle lit to the other side of a pool. He walks through the pool. Is a very, very moving and very poetical film. Okay, so now I go to Maya Lin, because today, as I said, in 1982, her memorial to the Vietnam veterans or victims was dedicated. So I think it is important to remember. I think it is very, very important to be connected with those who are not with us any longer. But being on that continuum, that spiral in time is important, because I think it's very, very, I don't know how to say, it's important not to feel alone and to understand that we are all vulnerable, we are all fragile, we will all die one day. But if we understand that we are part of a continuum, then probably fear is diminished, if not, totally erased. Maya Lin, a young person, student at 21, to be able to generate a vision for this memorial so convincing, so pure, it was remarkable. But what I didn't learn, and I'm actually very curious, I'm very curious about the jury. I think the jury that evaluated the competition in 1981 was itself very gifted and very sensitive, because they chose a work. They were not seduced by great renderings or I don't know about what. They understood the seriousness and the simple poetics of her project. It means the jury was very good. This is my belief. And I didn't investigate, but I should. Who were those who chose her work out of more than 1,000 projects? Here she is, she received a medal from President Obama. She deserves it. On the right, I think, is Robert Redford, who also received it. Anyway, architects sometimes do arrive at this level where they are acknowledged for their contribution to, society and life and art. Drawings, some drawings by Maya Lin, by this very special architect and artist. She does a lot of also installations and land art. So she actually doesn't build so much architecture per se, although she studied both art in her undergraduate studies at Yale, and then she studied architecture. But her work is somewhere in between. And even her installations are all about a form of poetics that are not very commonly addressed by architects. I think she was able, and she is able, to connect art and architecture in a very convincing way. Without a lot of words, just like her project, and you are going to see her project and we will comment. She didn't, with very simple means, she is able to generate emotions, and it's because of the depth of her feelings. I mean, all her work really is about, if I am not wrong, about trying to unite those two halves of art that Charles Baudelaire described. The transitory, the ephemeral with the eternal and the immutable. Here we see more of ephemerality, but there is a continuum, that eternal recurrence of the same that we saw previously in the previous presentation. There was a reference in one project through these words. Anyway, because even if we contemplate a lyrical graphic figure, my feeling is that this is about eternity. is not about the opposite of eternity, it's about eternity, but it is an eternity which is silently evoking itself or revealing itself through these, graphic images. Now, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, which, as I said, was built based on the competition from 1981, which he won, and in 1982, on November 13th, meaning, let me count, so 1982, 38 years ago, it was dedicated today. And truly a remarkable work, so simple, and so rewarding. It's not easy to do something like this. There was an architect, Harik Tesenov, who said, not everything that is simple is good, but everything that is very good is simple. I don't know. I mean, there is great Baroque art, but there is a truth, even Baroque art, even if it has its flamboyance, it doesn't truly mean it's not simple. I mean, yes, the flamboyance might give the impression that it's not simple, but conceptually, it probably is. Here she is with a model of her work, the 21 years old student. Amazing, I mean, it's actually beautiful. And that's why I try to convey this to the people I send the message today, to encourage them to participate in competitions. It doesn't matter what year you are in, or it doesn't matter if you are or you are not a student. What matters is if you have something to say it, and say it as honestly as you can. Look at these two gentlemen on her left and her right. They are amused in a way by the maturity of her work and by her success. And you see, she's very modest. I mean, I think a brilliant achievement. In fact, you see here on the back, maybe these two people were part of the jury. This is her project here on the back, on these easels. It's a victory of spirit, actually. It's an, I am exalted now. It's like an angelic moment when the angels decided to take sides with this young student, and they won. I mean, I particularly like the smile of this man here. Who is. I don't know. It's something. It's a nice moment, and it's a moment which should give us confidence that if you have something to say in any field, say it, and you might lose, but you could also win. Anyway, you could say this thing that she built is for the dead. But I actually think is for both the dead and those who are alive. And they are brought together. And in fact, I read that this very simple, landscape architecture that she envisioned is bringing people together in a beautiful way. In the name of those whose names are inscribed on that on that stone. Those in front of these walls, by the way, the work is called The Wall, come together. This is her project. Just look at it. Maybe pastel drawing or it's done in color pencils. I don't know, but it's very, very simple. And she didn't she didn't construct, linear perspective, rigorous, and so it's just a suggestive drawing, but it was enough for her to convey her idea. And just a letter size page there with a few words, and that's it. And she won. At that time, she didn't even study architecture. She was an art student in the second year. Anyway, it it only means that sometimes, you know, the conjunction of the stars, or I don't know how to put it. I mentioned the angels before. I don't think I ever mentioned angels ever before, but today now I felt, because I think there are such moments when miracles happen. I call it a small miracle. And look at the this was the project. That's all she did, and it worked, and it was built, and it's built in Washington D.C. You know, not in a anonymous place somewhere in the middle of the country. No, it's in Washington D.C. You know, this is what it means if you have an intuition. I made a presentation a while ago about Henrik Bergson. Bergson, the philosopher, advocated the value of intuition. If you have an intuition, that is more important than any analysis, you know, scientific or not. That intuition, trust your intuition, because there is something valuable in that intuition. She had an intuition, a vision here, you could say. It's a vision. Anyway, it became reality because there was something real in her vision. Congratulations, Maya. There is also something good here happening. I read that usually such memorials mention the people in the order, in the hierarchical order. This is not done here, and it's good that it is not done here, because in death we are all equal. There is not any longer a boss and someone who's not a boss. We are all equal. In a way, death does a great service to life, that it creates that equality that unfortunately, while we live, we forget about. But aren't we all supposed to be equal? You know, and you know, here you have specific names in a field of names, but so there is multiplicity, but there is also unity. It's this field of names somehow is like the foliage of a tree, that tree that you see reflected, or those trees you see reflected in the polished stone. Um, yes, and it was built just as as her project suggested. Do we know the sufferings these soldiers went through, those who didn't die? Do we know the sufferings of those who died? We do not. And we still launch wars, you know. It is incredible. The war in Iraq happened after the war in Vietnam. It was said that between 100,000 and 1 million Iraqis died, and 35,000 American soldiers died, and many were crippled. In Vietnam, this memorial was for about 55,000 American soldiers. How many Vietnamese died? Isn't this madness? Madness, or I think I put a letter there in surplus, sorry, Madness. It is. When are we going to stop starting wars? There is no such thing as a victorious war, really. Wars provoke death and suffering. Look at this young man who probably spent time in Vietnam, you know, and he probably feels guilty that he didn't die. And those people whose names are inscribed on the stone, they died, and we forgot the meaning of this word. Now, I don't know exactly why I placed this. It's, you know, on the left is the Fondation Cartier by, not Cartier, Louis Vuitton by Frank Gehry, and on the right, yeah, because I found this image on the web, and, you know, they are very opposite, the two images, you know, but it is to be discussed here, because maybe Frank Gehry also was concerned with the eternal and the immutable. And I know he was, because although the appearance of his building seems to say something else, but he did say that architecture should speak about the here and now, but should also speak about the eternal. And I believe it is true. In fact, he said the same thing that Baudelaire said. Um, I think I see her here on the building site. You know, she probably, I don't know, contributed herself in some form. But you see, this picture moves me again because I see here a militant young woman. She's like, on a mission. I think I don't know exactly how to express it, but I think through this work she transcended even the specificities of the program. This is more than just about the Vietnam War and more about just about the United States. It's about something that is eternal, and is to be addressed everywhere in the world, not just there in Washington D.C. Uh, it's a meditation on existence, on the human existence. So this is what she said. I saw the Vietnam Veterans Memorial not as an object placed into the earth, but as a cut in the earth that has been polished like a geode. Um, Interesting, this idea, that a cut in the earth. In a way, it is appropriate to think in these terms because it is a cut in the earth. It is a violence behind this memorial. It is the violence of an unjust war and the violence of a death which could have been avoided. And it was not avoided by so-called wise men who started the war. It's incredible. Art is very tricky because it's what you do for yourself. It's much harder for me to make those works than the monuments or the architecture. Well, I don't know about that, but um, I think here the man with the mustache is Moshe Safdie, the famous architect. Anyway, it doesn't probably matter. This is another quotation from her. A lot of my works deal with a passage, which is about time. I would agree with her. I don't see anything that I do as a static object in space. It has to exist as a journey in time. I would agree. She doesn't do objects, and that's a bravo to her. All my work is much more peaceful than I am. In, you know, she said it. She's probably a tormented woman, but her work aspires towards peacefulness, and sometimes she achieves it. I left science, then I went into art, but I approach things very analytically. I choose to pursue both art and architecture as completely separate fields rather than merging them. I don't know. I think some of her works are actually merging them. But often someone who does art doesn't evaluate very correctly his or her own activity. I deliberately did not read anything about the Vietnam War because I felt the politics of the war eclipsed what happened to the veterans. The politics were irrelevant to what this memorial was. I guess this is what I was trying to say. I had this feeling this was not about the literal truths, the facts of the Vietnam War. It was a meditation on death in general and on life in general. So indeed, the politics were irrelevant to what this memorial was, because it is an abstract symbolic work. Even though I build buildings and I pursue my architecture, I pursue it as an artist. Well, you see, she contradicts herself already, because just before she said that she doesn't merge them. And here she says, even though I build buildings, I pursue my architecture, I pursue it as an artist. So there, yeah, as an Italian critic once told me, Luigi Prestinenza, he said, Dan, never trust what architects say. They say one thing and they do another thing. I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to be an architectural firm. I want to remain an artist. This is also something almost unique. She works like a single woman, from her own studio, her own room. Well, she associated herself with another artist, a Japanese American artist, who see their building probably, certain things she cannot do all alone. But how many architects today work without an architectural firm and working alone? Not many. So now we see an open air peace chapel at this college, which I like very much. It's again very simple and very lyrical, very poetical. It's a human gesture there on earth, but it's not divorced from what is around it, and is not aggressive towards what is around it. Is distinctly human, but at the same time gently connecting with the natural landscape that it finds itself in. And you see, it encourages people to come together. It's sitting in a circle, and it's about dialogue. It's about communication, and this is, as I mentioned earlier, art equals bridge equals God. Is about communication. Is about bringing people together. Is about unity, joining. If we can achieve this, in whatever we do, we serve life the best way we can. I imagine even those little yellow flowers enjoy what they grow near. This is what I feel. Because art and life come together, they sustain each other. I love those flowers there. Why can't we be like these flowers? Now you tell me, we call ourselves Homo sapiens, and we go and kill each other in Iraq or in Vietnam or I don't know where. Why can't we learn from these flowers? Let's look at these flowers. They don't kill each other. They, of course, in the field of animals, there are things less peaceful. It's true. I always ask myself, why didn't God make things differently? Why does the wolf eat the deer? Why does the big fish eat the small fish? There is aggressivity in the natural world as well, unfortunately. But I prefer now to forget about that aggressivity and look at these beautiful, beautiful yellow flowers who are anonymous, exactly like those anonymous people. I hesitated to use the word artist, who erected again the Chartres Cathedral after it burned down. Those beautiful anonymous human beings that Ingmar Bergman talked about, these flowers are the same way. I love those flowers. Okay, so Eclipse Time. This was done an artwork at Pennsylvania Station, in a very busy place in the big metropolis in Manhattan. And it's a work that it's difficult to comprehend even here in front of a laptop. But I imagine the Penn Station is, you are running to catch a train or to go to work, and you cannot allow yourself a moment to contemplate what this work is about. But it is amazing in a way that the administration of the Penn Station commissioned Maya Lin to build something like this. And I think I have pictures here with traffic of people, very busy, of course, and then the artwork, which is you look at it. Above you have the abstract meditation of Amaya Lin, and below you have the the traffic of running towards business, towards work, coming from work, and so on. So that artwork above is a reminder of what we usually neglect in the rush to so-called live. Anyway, she was courageous here too. Women's Table. This is also another brilliant work. And I suspect, to an extent at least, she's a feminist. And this is a work, kind of a memorial table for honoring all the women who studied at Yale. Initially, if I'm not wrong, only men were allowed at Yale University. But then women became, accepted. So let's see, a fountain dedicated to the women at Yale University. Inscribed upon it, it is a spiral. You remember that I kept mentioning the continuity that takes the shape of a spiral that traces the presence of women, counting women enrolled each year to Yale from when they were not expected to the present. It is a gesture of doing justice. And she did it again, not in a, factual way, but in a poetical, abstract way. And I think she's very good. It's not obstructive. It's not obtrusive. I'm beginning to forget to speak English. Sorry. It is a work that is modest, but it has a spine. It tells what it has to say, but it doesn't do it beyond certain limits of reticence. And I like the fact that that man is stopping to look at that spiral, which is covered by a thin layer of water. It's kind of a gentle vortex, that the thin layer of water under a sky where sometimes, as Van Gogh was so capable of doing, the cosmic vortex of cosmic events and star movements and so on happens. It's a good work. It connects, just like the column of the infinite by Brancusi, it connects the earth with the sky, although it is horizontal, as it is supposed to be. This is a commemorative gesture towards the women at Yale. And yes, it uses numbers. Yes, it has rigor, precision even, but it also has discretion. And it is an artwork. And it is metaphorical as well, not just factual, although those numbers, refer to facts and to the measurable. What do we see here? We see gestures of affection. This is what we see, an artwork that invites affection. And as such, it deserves to be. And if art achieves this, it achieves the ultimate, the maximum, really. If it makes us better, if it makes us understand that we are all one, then our work, I think, is very worthy. And it seems she was able to do this. She was able to unite people in front of her Vietnam memorial, and she's able to unite people here as well, as you can see. I think art is also about the road not taken or the return of the repressed. Here, in this case, the repressed was the woman, those women who were not allowed in a male's university, but then they began to be accepted. And the woman built this artwork, and we see here 4 young women who connect with those who preceded them. And it's beautiful on the continuum of the spiral, meaning of time. Very nice work. Bravo again to Maya Lin. The Wayfield, this is another work, kind of a land art, where we see the human being, meaning Maya Lin, act upon nature. You would say, well, Was it needed? Well, it depends what we understand by the verb to need. Art is needed, yes. I think it is needed. Um, and you know, her contribution here was to problematize in a way, and not just accept placidly and inactively, you know, whatever was given to us. We complement nature, and if we do it creatively, then it is worth doing it, and she does it creatively. Now, in this way, maybe she also externalized her inner turmoil, you know, these waves, you know, you could call them psychic waves. They're also, I mean, they are with the vegetable material, with green material, you know, they are, it's grass, but it's a grass which is modeled by the inner world of the artist. Myalin sculpture, Storm King are sent in Orange County. Um, Wayfield at Ann Arbor in Michigan, where there is a great university. Here she is. Novartis Research Center together with Toshiko Mori. Now you'll see a building she built. Uh, Toshiko Mori is a well-known American, Japanese American architect. I think she teaches at Harvard, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, what can we say about this building? I don't know. I don't know exactly what the contribution of Myalin was, but there are some things here that I like. You know, this embroidered fascia, this embroidered second skin of the building. Of course, it has been done previously, and you know, maybe in the field of architecture per se, she didn't. You'll see a few other things by her, but uh, I don't know. I think her work in the field of land art and you know, art per se, she's probably a little more accomplished than in the field of architecture per se. Well, the interiors is Novartis, you know, big institution. But I like that advertising there. This is a pizza happy place. Well, the pizza is erased. It's just a happy place. Well, let's hope it is. Anyway, Novartis built, for Novartis built some other important architects in Switzerland, some interesting buildings, including Frank Gehry and Peter Markley. Anyway, this is the Chinese museum, but we'll come back to this, where she left in New York City. She left the old building in this way, and I think it's another courageous gesture. You know, she didn't try to embellish it. She just left the raw, you know, architectural context, which is very, I think, evocative, just as it is, and it doesn't need, you know, modernization. Now look at this work in Sweden. I also think is excellent. Look at the little house, the red little house here, and this, how could we call it? A snake or it's mysterious. It's yes, it's a human intervention, but it's a human intervention which testifies also about something that is beyond the humans. I think it's very, very nice. And, you know, yes, it's a creation.
It makes me think about those drawings from Nazca,
From
you know,
what?
in those drawings in Chile desert, or I don't remember exactly.
Ah, yes, yes, yes.
I think it's Nazca, the name of the region.
Now, a chapel she built, I don't know, I think maybe because of the requirements, the clients, the program, I think architectural work per se is a little bit different from her artwork because it's, I don't know, I find it a little bit too polished and too, but she's able to do something else too. Um, I don't know. To me, this is less moving than some of the works that we saw earlier. Um, it has something corporate about it, and I don't know. I don't know if it's appropriate for a chapel to begin with. It's a little bit predictable, but uh, I wouldn't call it. I wouldn't even call it a chapel. It says at the heart of the drawing of the design is the abstracted image of a boat or ark that is constructed out of wood and forms the main body of the chapel. It is both a quiet reminder of the motto of the Children's Defense Fund, "Dear Lord, be good to me. The sea is so wide and my boat is so small." I don't know. I mean, maybe if you visit it, you see some connection between the building and these words. Um, Here is another building she built, which is interesting, but still is something a little bit contrived. I think this old wood is beautiful and the patina is beautiful, but then that roofing is so without a patina. Maybe in time we'll have its patina too. I don't know. Again, here I have a feeling that somehow, but again, I don't know. Maybe the client, maybe the program required for so-called. What I'm trying to say is this: that roof is typical of what we understand by the word civilization. But what is under the roof, that patina, that weathered structure and building, is about something else because it's a. You remember she said, "I'm concerned with time." Well, yeah, here most of the building is concerned with time, but not the roof. The roof represents something else, and I don't know. Again, maybe in time it will connect with the passage of time as well. Let's hope. Um, Now, this picture, what can I say? Is yes, it is Photoshop probably, or it is poeticized excessively. Anyway, the Museum of Chinese Art. You saw already a picture, and that one I like very much. Is this one? If it was left just like this, it would have been great. Probably it has some parts. I see the so-called civilized parts, design parts. But I think if you are truly concerned with time and with truth, then you can accept and even invite this form of rawness, RAW, because but I see here other things, only now I noticed, there is a picture here. Anyway, I like what I see in this picture, but unfortunately I couldn't find other pictures with this museum. But if it is just this, I think it's a great work. Although maybe she didn't do too much to it, I don't know. Um, anyway, the box house. This is a big so-called civilized house, a modern house. For my taste, too modern and too clean and too polished and too glittering and too, but anyway, she did. I prefer her work like this. Here there is abstraction too, but there is also the aleatory movement of these rectangles. And yeah, this is land art. It's not architecture, it's not art, it's land art. But I think it has some value. I don't like it so much as what we saw previously with those waves. This one is still a little bit stiff and almost a little bit rational or scientific because of the rectangles. But I don't know the specifics of the program. Maybe she had to connect with a certain requirement of the program. That's it. I plan when her birthday will come to develop this presentation with other things, because I made this presentation on her work about 2 years ago, and